So, welcome to the second half of the family conference. My name is Sally Hall. I work for the BC Schizophrenia Society. You cannot hear me? I have to really go there. So I have to bend down, I guess, like that. Or how did Pat do it? Anyway, we have three of us speaking today, and we're going to start with Justun Miller, so we aren't in the order of the program. And we had a reason for that. I thought we might start with Heidi, but then we rethought it, and it came from the place of, yes, it is often the police that are the first people we call upon, but in fact, we want to shift it a little bit to maybe prevention and maybe not having the police be the first people. So Justin's going to be the first one to speak. So welcome, Justun.
Okay, hello everybody. Hope you enjoyed your lunch. Thanks for sticking around. So as you can see, I'm going to be talking about the Family Support and Involvement Team. I'm going to be going through a little bit of a brief history. I've only got like 15 minutes to speak, so I apologize if I'm leaving pieces out, but I'm just trying to make sure that you get the general gist of how the FSI team came to be and what we do and what that means in terms of helping and supporting yourselves. And I have a section set at the end for questions, but I know that we're doing a panel and a facilitated discussion, so we'll just kind of play that by ear. Okay. Okay, so I'd like to start off by just kind of letting you guys know who we are. So we're the Family Support and Involvement Team. So there's myself, Justun, and we're split up into different levels of responsibility for care. So there's myself, who's the coordinator for community. So that's if you've got loved ones or people you care about or yourselves are receiving services in the community. So that's whether it's through a mental health team, whether you're not receiving mental health team services, but you're in the community, maybe getting some services through Vancouver General Hospital outpatient team, or if you're just wondering, okay, how on earth do I get my loved one into the system? I'm the guy that can help you out with that process. In terms of immediate support, I can actually help you as well, connecting with services, getting into the system, connecting with AAC, understanding the whole process. So I could be a very frontline kind of person there. Then there's Isabella Mori. I don't know if Isabella is the wonderful person up at the back waving. Isabella is responsible for acute, so people who are in the hospital. If you've got loved ones in the hospital, Isabella is the wonderful lady who will talk to you and support you through that process there. And then there's Becky, wonderful lady here, who is responsible for tertiary. My manager, Gloria, peeking out the door at the back there, she's the manager responsible for all of us. So now you've got faces to the team that is here to help you. We also have our pictures on the display table out front there as well. And there's a bunch of great information, which I'm going to kind of touch on as we go through as well. Okay, so now you know who we are and you know what we look like. You also know the areas of responsibility that we work in. It's only natural to kind of wonder, okay, well, what do you guys do? And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about here a little bit. So here's the formal part of it. So it's acronyms as well, okay? So FSI is the Family Support and Involvement Team, so that's who you just met. So the FSI team is guided by the Family Support and Involvement Plan, which recognizes the following priorities for families. So this is the formal piece, which I'm not going to read out to you because it's not really much fun to hear and it's kind of dry. But what we're going to go through is what that means and what it looks like in real life. Okay, so part of that is I want to give you some context. So just so you kind of know where these points came from, what they mean, what the meaning behind them is, and how it all came about. So where they came from is the family plan. So in order to know a little bit more about the family plan, it all started to take place in 1997 when Vancouver Coastal Health responded to input from families and loved ones who were saying it was really hard to access the system and it was a real challenge to get involved with the care of their loved ones and be incorporated and respected in the levels that they wanted. So that got the ball rolling. And what happened was the family plan was conceived, and then it started to move forward. And part of that moving forward process was there was about 120 families and about 100 staff members who were involved in a consultation process in which they all started together and brainstormed about what they wanted, what they needed, what the struggles they were facing were, and how they thought these things were going to be addressed and how they could make things better. So, very long story short, in 2004, the family involvement plan was put into place. So part of that family involvement plan was the creation of the Family Advisory Committee. And that's the wonderful body which has made events like this possible and lots of wonderful other things. So lots of the people you've been talking to today and who have presented today have been part of the FAC and influencing and working very hard to make these wonderful things happen for family members. So, one of the things which came about from the FAC and the family plan, and one thing I'm pretty happy about, is the creation of the FSI team. So if it wasn't for the FAC and the family plan, myself, Becky, Isabella, Gloria, none of this would be here, right? So it's this wonderful first step kind of getting families involved piece which came about. Another part which the FAC has worked very, very, very hard on, and which we use every single day now within Vancouver Coastal Health and Province Health, is the Family Support and Involvement Policy. So we've got hard copies of it around. There's Family Support and Involvement flyers in your little purple folders, and in those there's a link which actually will take you to the Family Support and Involvement Policy. So that policy it's like solid gold. So the gentleman who was asking this morning, well, what about confidentiality, right? Like we run into that a lot, right? Where our loved ones say, I don't want you talking to my parents about this, or my family, or my friends, or anything like this. So there's still varying responses coming from the professionals in regards to what they will and won't share. So if you guys get that family policy in your hands, have a good read through it, you've got Vancouver Coastal Health's policy on how professionals are supposed to be reacting and what information they're sharing and what criteria need to be considered in terms of what information can be shared. So it's super, super valuable. It is Vancouver Health policy, so it's giving you some teeth, right? It's not just bark. So part of what we do as the Family Support and Involvement team is we help family members become aware of this policy, how to read it, how to understand it, but we also support staff members when they're working with different family members and they're unsure about whether they can share or not. At the end of the day, as was mentioned this morning in the presentation, there's a lot of great, caring, well-meaning people working in this field, and it's not that they don't want to share information or be helpful, it's just sometimes they're nervous or unsure about confidentiality, and they're erring on what they see to be the side of caution and respecting the client, right? But as part of the Family Support and Involvement team, we see that family is part of that team, and they have rights to know and need to know information. Another part which was touched on this morning, and it's in the policy as well, is any information that you guys want to share with the care team can always receive information. It doesn't matter if your loved one has said, I don't want you to talk to my family. If you have pertinent information you want to share, the care team can receive that. And it's actually really, really, really important. It's part of a comprehensive and thorough assessment for a loved one. Family members, you guys that are out there and living with your loved ones and seeing them every single day, you know a lot more and have a lot more experience in terms of what the decompensation looks like, what's really going on, right? It's not unusual for our loved ones to come into a session and be able to kind of, quote unquote, hold it together for maybe that half an hour that they're meeting with the professional and then get back out on the street and be quite unwell again, right? Whereas the professionals are just like, oh no, presented well, good eye contact, denied hallucinations, see you next week kind of thing, right? So when you guys can share the reality of what happens when that person's not holding it together in that appointment, then that can be really, really helpful as well, okay? So another part of the family, so there's lots of parts to the family policy, but like I said, I'm going to go and touch on some of the more important pieces. So another part is that ultimately what the policy would like us to do is assist professionals to be able to provide care, support, education, and involve family members in the care of their loved ones. So that's what we're looking for. And ultimately, the goal is to improve the care that our loved ones are receiving and make sure that they're healthier, right? So everyone, we have that goal. We have that shared goal. And it's just a case of making sure that we all understand that and understand how we can get there consistently. So yourselves aren't experiencing the frustrations where you're going to one team and experiencing maybe a professional who's very helpful and gets it, right? They get the family piece. And then the next thing you know, your loved one's being transferred to a different team, or they're going through a different experience and you're working with a different professional, and it can almost be like night and day, right? All of a sudden you're not being involved, you're not being talked to. So we want to try and avoid that inconsistency and make it a lot more thorough. And also to support you guys through it too, because when our loved ones become unwell, there's a lot of things which happen quite quickly. So all of a sudden, you're kind of expected to be aware of what to do as like being a case manager. So you're supposed to know how to get people to appointments and reschedule your day, and you're supposed to have a knowledge of medications and all of these different things, which a lot of the professionals go to school for like 8 years to learn, but you're supposed to know in the next like 5 minutes and make happen, right? So we're here to help support you guys through that as well. So what do those points look like in real life, right? So what does that look like on the ground when you guys are making phone calls to us, or you're kind of wondering, well, what does this mean, right? It sounds good in theory, but how does it work? So here's the same points again. So the first point is collaboration between families and service providers. And the second point is access to information about and assistance with bridging and linkage to services. So these first 2 points, the FSI team and a lot of the other professionals in Vancouver Coastal Health here, we're working directly towards making these things happen. So that's where the family policy is really, really important. So like I was saying to you guys, it's fantastic if you can review that document and know it, because there's a lot of very specific situations that we can share with professionals to make sure that you guys are being involved and incorporated into care. So more specifically, as part of the FSI team, the supports that we provide, they're one-on-one supports. So Becky, myself, and Isabella, and Gloria too, we're all available by phone, by email, and through face-to-face consults as well, right? So it's very approachable. It's whatever works best for you. There's some people who I've never met, and I've just kind of talked over the phone or gone through email. There's some people I've met a few times face-to-face. But regardless, it's whatever works best for people, right? We also do a lot of support work too. I've worked with quite a few different people out of province and different areas of the province as well. So, you know, people transfer in and need care or transfer out and need care. So we're doing stuff outside of Vancouver as well, which is pretty exciting as well. What else we got? So we're also with you on every level of your loved one's care. So as you guys know, it can be different for each of us, right? Some of our loved ones may never end up at a mental health team, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we need to know what resources are available and how best to support our loved ones at those different stages, right? So we can help at all of those stages, whether it's sharing. I put together a family support and involvement community resource list. So that's available. I think it's in your packages, and I also have it online. So that's a comprehensive list which is updated a couple times a year. It's got all different family counseling resources, different nonprofit agencies, all those different kind of things in the community, so we can actually look at those supports which are there, and I can help walk through those with you and pick the best ones which are going to fit your loved one's needs. So then on top of that, if you do have loved ones accessing services within the system, then we can support you in how to communicate with the team more effectively, right? Because as we're going through something as family members, there's a lot of emotion, and it's very different experience for family than it is for professionals, right? And that's one of the advantages of having professionals in, is it's a more objective lens, but we need to make sure that that's not too objective and that's not taking priority. So as family members and as FSI team members, we can help support you learn how to speak mental health team, right? So we can help you to highlight the important pieces that the team needs to know. We can help you support you and get you support so that your emotional pieces, you're able to manage them and not put yourselves on the back burner too much, right? We do need to make sure that you're emphasizing and practicing self-care, because if you guys just keep sacrificing and putting our loved ones and not your own concerns, you're going to be burnt out, and then you're not going to be able to do what you're ultimately trying to do, which is help people around you, right? So a lot of that is what we do as well. So we offer family support and involvement groups. We offer education groups. We connect you guys with all the different resources in the community as well. And we do that through a number of different means, which I'll touch on as well. So number 3, educational opportunities for mental health and addiction services, service professionals to support their work with families. So there's a lot of great work that's being done by the FAC and Vancouver Coastal Health in this area as well. So there's for any new staff coming into Vancouver Coastal Health, we have what's called the Heart and Soul training, and it's mandatory training for new staff. So they get brought up to speed about all the different policies and things which are in place with Vancouver Health and what that means to work for this health authority. And what's really exciting is we've actually incorporated family material into that. So part of that training now, has a portion where the family support and involvement team, along with a family member, will come in and they'll present talking on the family advisory, family support and involvement policy, and then the family member shares their experiences and interactions with the mental health team and what that was like. And it's getting so much positive and powerful feedback that it's phenomenal, right? So these new staff are coming into the system and we're setting the tone for them to understand what our expectations are, what the policy is in regards to how you interact and how you work with families. So we're really setting it there, and it's a very powerful, factual, policy-based message, and it's also got the real-life emotional piece from family members as well. And we're getting, like I said, we're getting really good feedback on that. In addition to that, there's a number of other different training opportunities for staff as well. There's the Core Addictions Practices training. I just started facilitating that with a bunch of other co-facilitators there. And most recently, so what we've done, as you can tell from the name, the Core Addictions Practice, that's primarily focused on addiction and how to help people with addiction, right? So it's talking about different approaches, harm reduction, different things which work. What's exciting now is we're actually starting to incorporate new mental health material into that as well. So you can see, like, as we've talked about and you've heard about already today, it's very difficult to separate mental health from addictions, right? It's impossible, really. You can't get one without the other. So now we're getting this training opportunity where we're sharing both intro information and levels of knowledge with our new employees. And we're also strengthening and enforcing the importance of family inclusion there as well. So, because there are different climates sometimes in terms of professionals from mental health and addiction, right? There's different levels of stigma, different understandings, different terminologies. So again, we're going back to that piece where we're trying to make sure that it's a consistent approach and understanding when you guys are accessing and working with us. In addition to that, we actually go out into the community and do presentations. I've done some presentations at UBC for medical students and for occupational therapy students at the master's levels. So we're connecting with family members we're connecting with future professionals who are going to enter into the system, and again, reinforcing the importance of the policy and involvement with families. So again, we're really pushing hard to make sure that people are educated at this early stage and kind of coming into the system knowing what our expectations are. Okay. So access to and coordination of family services and supports, and increase public awareness of mental health issues through public education and other approaches. Wrap it up? Okay. So for that one, there's the main points that we have. We have the family support and involvement News Connections newsletter. Okay, so that one's available online and it's out front here as well. This one can bring you up to speed on different things which are available in the community. The February issue actually has a bunch of really powerful and amazing articles submitted by family members, right? So it's a good resource there. And kind of very importantly as well, in the back there's a calendar which highlights all of the support groups in the community, all the contact information, what they're all about. We have the family distribution e-list, which we sent out as well. Again, you can sign up for that through Spotlight on Mental Health. And then Becky does a ton of amazing education nights at tertiary. Isabella does fantastic work as well with support groups. And again, everything we do, we make sure we include families as much as possible, empower families, family content, family voices being heard. We love families, right? Yeah, so I guess I'm out of time. I can just answer some questions if there's more specific stuff after the presentations during the discussion. Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Heidi Schoenberger. I'm a constable with Vancouver Police, believe it or not. I'm not giving up the shorts despite the rain. The VPD is a very often concerning spot for families with family members in mental health crisis. And so it's very important for the VPD to have recognized how much time police officers spend dealing with mental health crisis. And I think that it's got to be 10 or 12 years ago now. There was a study done, and you guys might be familiar with it, Lost in Transition, showed that 80% of our calls involved mental health crisis. So it's absolutely imperative that the VPD embraces dealing with mental health and embraces working with the community. So that being said, I think everybody's familiar with CAR 87 here. We also have, so there's 4 dedicated officers to CAR 87, but we also have about 800 trained police constables out on the street. At any given time, there can be 100 to 200 of them out on the street, and we're trained all to the same level with mental health training. Years ago, when I worked in CAR 87 in the early 2000s, there had been a few shootings of clients with mental health issues. And so I was tasked with doing something to further the training for our members, and recognizing that we very seldom shoot homicide suspects or robbery suspects, but we do, and unfortunately, most of our shootings involve the mentally ill. And so, which is very sad and very difficult as family members, but it's also very sad and difficult as police officers because the trauma involved after for everybody is horrible. So I went down to the States, and they were a little bit more progressive. They had a long-time training type thing called crisis intervention training. So I went down, took that, brought it back. Our training section supported me in putting together a 4-day crisis intervention training for our members, and it turned out to be awesome. It was a lot of rapport building. BCSS was a big part of that at the time, bringing consumers, so our officers were able to sit and listen to consumers and their concerns, so we could, officers could actually hear what it felt like to be on that handcuffing end or that family end of what happened. And as time progressed, that 4-day training evolved into what is now called crisis intervention and de-escalation training. And it's now mandatory for all police officers in British Columbia to take that training. All of Vancouver members have been trained. Any new members coming in, they'll get some training at the police academy, but they, as soon as the opportunity arises and there's enough of them to do it, they're put through that crisis intervention and de-escalation training. So it's not about recognizing, she's schizophrenic, or he has bipolar, or those kind of things. It's recognizing behavior. And as Justun said, there's a lot of addictions issues and psychosis now related to drug use, and
especially methamphetamines. It's horrible to be a police officer out on the street right now with some of the psychosis coming from the meth use, and just it's horrifying to think what it's going to be like in 2 years or 5 years down the road, with the resources getting tapped out already, just with true mental illness, but let alone mental illness due to drug use and psychosis due to drug use. So all this being said, the VPD has, from our management, our chief on down, starting with Chief Chu and now Adam Palmer, has made it pretty much the #1 priority for the VPD to have mental health training. It goes up to, right up to our mayor and right on up to the Ministry of Health. Terry Lake has made it a priority that police training and mental illness is so important. So what the VPD has done in collaboration with Coastal Health is we've got CAR 87, which has 4 officers, but we also have 2 other teams. We have the ACT teams, Assertive Community Treatment teams, which have 2 officers, working with 5 ACT teams. And the latest is the Assertive Outreach team, which I am a member of now. Fortunate to have been the first police member there, working with a psych nurse. And what our role is we're a bridging team. So we actually, people who have high police contacts, homeless individuals, high hospital contacts, they've just been released from federal prison and have no resources. We go out into the community. We outreach them. We're purely outreach. Nobody comes to our office. We purely outreach. We have 4 officers, 4 nurses. We work 7:30 in the morning to 11 p.m., so we're available out there. And we stabilize people and then get them to other resources, whether it's to a GP, a mental health team, or an ACT team, wherever the system, how it's set up, feels that individual is best suited and best served. So it has been really, really fun to be on this team because we have had some amazing successes, even with guys that are have addictions and mental health issues, where some of these guys are having 10 and 12 police contacts a week, and we've got them down to 3 in the year. Like, it's ridiculously how successful it is, and just super, super fun to be a part of. And I know that you guys have concerns with police being out there, but we're your friends. We're not there to, throw your loved ones down on the ground and throw handcuffs on them. Sometimes, for the safety of everybody, including the client, that's what happens. But our members and our ACT police officers, our assertive outreach team officers, and 87 officers are trained to talk first, try to negotiate to get somebody safely there without actually having to harm them. So I welcome questions at the end of this from you guys, because it can only, your questions and what we decide to do with them or how we handle them is the only way that police can actually make things even better for people. And we're hoping that every time a team like this is created, that there's another layer of support that we can throw at families to help them. And we actually spend a lot of time on the phone with families, our admin staff, while we're out on the road, or we'll come back and we'll say, yeah, we just saw so-and-so, he's doing awesome, he doesn't want to talk to you right now, but he will, and we're working on that. We're working on getting him somewhere, or her somewhere that, to a place that they can get back to families and be a part of a family again. But I welcome questions from you guys at the end of this, so please, any questions, comments, or concerns, please ask.
We brought, we thought we'd do it in the order that we did because the BC Schizophrenia Society really relies on both the mental health system and the police. Our organization has been around for 34 years, and I'm going to move to the next slide. Support, education, advocacy, and research are our 4 mandates. I am very proud to be both a family member and to work for the BC Schizophrenia Society. It's kind of one of those synchronicities of life that I got to be in this position. I'm definitely passionate about my son's well-being, and I get to express it with the family members, and that has just, that's a real privilege. So what I'm really proud of, and you may not know this, we're a grassroots organization, started 34 years ago by family members around the kitchen table. There are people here who were there in the early days, and their work has brought the attention of the most vulnerable population to the politicians, because bottom line, it's a political situation. So what you may not know is that the schizophrenia chair at UBC, the first $1 million was raised by the BC Schizophrenia Society. Yes. I'm sure soon we're going to be needing to call on, again, we had one member collect pennies to do that, to put the fund in place. We don't have any pennies anymore, so it'll be nickels and dimes and more than that. But it'll be time to actually up the ante on that, because $1 million doesn't go very far, unfortunately, these days. So that's something I'm really proud of, and we don't broadcast it quite enough, so there you go on that one. We do rely on you, family members, to keep us alive, and your voice is remarkably effective at the political level. So just so you know, when you move from crisis and have a little more time to think about what you can do, then please stay in touch with the BC Schizophrenia Society. We serve not only people who have schizophrenia, but bipolar, the psychiatric illnesses. So, and of course, many of and my loved ones, including mine at this moment, have dual diagnosis. So drugs and alcohol are often part of the scene. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So we're probably I would also say we're the best kept secret. One of the things that often happens when I get a call is people have been suffering for a long time before they find us. And I have to say, it's probably our website that gets people's attention, because when you Google schizophrenia, BC is at the front of it. So that's how people find us. And, it's always just really surprising to me how, because we don't advertise, it takes a while for people to get to us. And my story of coming was when my son was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was actually born with a brain injury. He wasn't breathing when he was born. So schizophrenia came when he was 17 and put a knife in his arm. And fortunately, he was in the mental health system and had a great case worker. And I said, schizophrenia, I have no idea what that is. And he said, well, there's the BC Schizophrenia Society. They have education and support groups. So the first thing I did was attended the Strengthening Families Together. And many of you have probably done that. So coming into a room, and I have to say this about our support groups, is it's like coming home. And, you know, in the grief and the chaos and the tears, we always have Kleenex. It was such a relief to not have to say a lot with other people who understood. And I think that's what sets us apart. And I love the strides that are being made, that there are support groups now within the mental health system. However, with the families there, it's kind of a big hug. But we don't do that right away because, you know, we don't want to scare off new people. But, you know, it's just really that understanding, the deep understanding that's available from people who are walking the same journey. So I'm probably not following my slides very well. So I'll tell you some of our education. So we've got our Strengthening Families Together. We have, we're working on a Strengthening Families First Nations. So we got some money for that. 2 of the projects have been piloted. And I am now wearing a medicine bag from one of the First Nations people that have done our work. And they, one of the elders has made a medicine bag for each of us in the BC Schizophrenia Society. So I am carrying that with me in honor of that, and to have my colleagues who are with me today, there's some of them here. So it's really, that's how deeply people get touched, which I was crying a lot. We had our educators training this, or gathering the last 2 days, and I cried a lot. We need Kleenex in that too. Our partnership presentations, Heidi mentioned it, we train the police, so having people who have a lived experience, both from the family perspective and from having an illness, so courageous in telling their stories and the impact it has on the nurses who are being trained at UBC, Douglas College, you know, all the colleges and universities. We also go into the high schools to let young people know that the illness starts at 14 years old, 15 years old, and you know, it just has an amazing impact. I'm very proud of that program. We're continually, so as Justun talked about the policy, the family policy, it's us as family members who are often helping the clinicians to understand what that means. And that's my role. So I think I'm a coach with family members to have them go back into the ring sometimes, because that's sometimes what it feels like, to say this isn't good enough. I have to say my son has, you know, I can't count the number. He's got 12 people around him right now. So that gives you an idea. He would not be alive without the care of the mental health system. That I can definitely say. And I have to say, many clinicians have gone above and beyond to look after him. I believe it's really important to have a strong relationship with the people that are the medical folks behind working with my son. And I've lost my train of thought there. So with that family inclusion, and I have to again acknowledge members of the BC Schizophrenia Society that both were part of creating the Family Advisory Committee and nurturing the family policy into being. And I also have to say that Vancouver Coastal Health is the only health authority in Canada that has a policy. And that gives it's really, yeah. So it gives us as family members, because we can refer to that, and not in a heavy-handed way. Some of my family members might say, well, sometimes Sally's a little heavy-handed, but, you know, don't be heavy-handed, be gentle and, you know, tenacious. But they really don't know, and they do want to respect our loved ones' wishes. However, when our loved one is relying on us in many ways, we need to know what's happening. So I think we're making progress, so that's great. The BC Mental Health Act, again, this is something we can be proud of in BC. I have to finish soon, because then we can have questions. It is different. So every province has a different mental health act, and ours gives us the right to have somebody put into the hospital without their consent. And although it may be harsh at times, sometimes that saves their lives. So what the heck? That's good. I think that is, the other thing that I just want to really quickly touch upon, these are our current advocacy issues. We're looking at cognitive remedial issues, so that cognitive deficits that occur. This is all at the provincial level. Housing, training, better training for doctors, particularly in mental health issues, and the family involvement increasing. So those are all at the provincial level, and that's where the power lies as well, that we have educators around the province. So when you call us, and if your family member has actually gone somewhere else in the province, we can connect you to somebody who knows that region well and can help you find them. Okay, so these are the really quick tips and tricks. One of the things I always say to families when they call me is, we're on a journey. Nothing is going to happen fast. And my executive director, when I first started with the BC Schizophrenia Society, she trained me well. She said, first thing you need to do is write it down, for your benefit as well as for whoever you're going to be working with as clinicians. So you are clear what the diagnosis is, what medication they're on, and the current stage of affairs. So if there's a relapse occurring, you're describing what's happening, and you can give that piece of paper rather than repeat yourself a lot of times. The other thing that we have are a lot of fact sheets, and this one is, you can't see it very well, but it's our discharge checklist from the hospital. And again, it's just something of the many things that we have as resources that I can walk you through, and it's a helpful tool to stay on track and to have that family meeting prior to being discharged. And the message that we've gotten today is that there's a lot of attention that's going to be paid to that discharge plan. And so often that's when our loved ones fall through the cracks. So it's that kind of thing that we can keep working together. So where we're helpful is if you have something that you want to improve, come to us and we can begin to work together to have it happen, because it will take all of us doing it together. So with that, I think that's how you can reach us. And I'm done, and we can have all three of us up here to answer your questions. Oh, I'm supposed to give you a message about the mic. So you are not given the mic, but the mic needs to be spoken into and speak clearly so that we all can hear you, especially the people at the back. Oh, and we can go sit. Okay. We have to speak into the mic.
This is to Heidi, the police officer. I just want to thank you so much. We've dealt, my son is 35, and we've dealt with the police many a time. 8 years ago, the first time, he's not a drinker, he's not a drugger, and 5 came with tasers. We just were nervous because he was staying in the room, lights off, windows, he didn't really want to talk, and we were really concerned. We were really fresh with all this. 5 guys and tasers ran up the stairs. I tell you, since then, it's been like a change, like a rainbow from the sky. Not only do 2 usually come, and usually with a nurse or someone like that, but they always ask us to be quiet, present, but be quiet. And they ask him like he's an intelligent human being. Can we hear your side of the story? Do you know why we've been called? Do you think you need help? Do you think you might need to go to the hospital? I mean, amazing. Amazing.
that. Thank you for that.
It's, the guys are so wonderful. I know I have a voice, and you can hear me in New York. It's okay. That, you know, they just, they'll come and they'll say, well, you know, and many of them have a personal experience. A couple of them, Jai hasn't been out there around, well, a couple of times, but, you know, just there at present and not well. And he'll just say, you know, so he'll just say, you know, my sister or my mom had an issue at one time, and that's why I got into this business, and that's why I'm here to help you. And we are here just to help you be safe and everything. And usually his escalation is just, well, he's treated like a human being. And I hear what you say. Sometimes, you know, but there's some that are just so excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Keep it coming.
Yes. Love to hear that, because that's, we don't want to hurt anybody. I know that none of us want to, so that's part, we have what is called a control tactics thing, and it involves all of our tools on our tool belt, and our first tool is our voice. And so we're trained to start there, and if things need to escalate, then they need to escalate. And if we start here, there's not a chance that it's going to come back down to talking. So.
I have a question for Justun, and it's regarding the services that you offer. Are there any costs to the family?
So the services that we offer specifically through the Family Support and Involvement Team, no, there aren't. We have the support group, and we also have the education series, and they're both held at the CIBC Center for Patients and Families, which is, you actually walk by it on your way in. So those ones are free. And then, like I said before, like we connect with all the other resources in the community, and a lot of those are free too, right? Like BCSS and MDA offer some great stuff as well. There's some really good resources. Like I said, in the newsletter, there's some great stuff there, or you can just give me a call and we can talk about it too.
Thinking about the schools, what's the, for Heidi, what's the intersect between the school liaison officer and these specialized teams? So for example, if a student who's been on their way to crashing, and either just before they crash or when they've crashed, who is it that is called?
Interestingly enough, our school liaison, our youth services section, and our mental health unit in the VPD are in the same room. So a lot of they get all this crisis intervention and de-escalation training, but we've also had threat assessment training. We've had mental health, Canadian Mental Health Association first aid training. We've had all of those training, and if any issues come up with students in the schools, it gets filtered straight over to one of us in the unit.
So in the spirit of families are included, I wonder how much that information comes back to the high school counselor. For me, as a high school counselor, I was surprised that it didn't come back except through administration in little tiny bits, whereas I was the one that had that connection with the student, and I found that quite upsetting.
Okay. You know what? It would be, for you, probably just a matter of connecting with the school liaison officer and asking that question. Yeah. It may not, you know, and if you have no success there, sometimes a lot of our work is privacy issues, even though you may be the first person that is dealing with this person, or it might be especially if it's a collaborative effort, there should be no reason that you shouldn't be hearing results. And if you are, then it's a concern and you should take it to the school liaison officer or their boss. Yeah.
I have two questions. One for Justun is well, I'm from the Interior Health Authority, and if I had family members that needed to have some questions answered, could they contact you, and would you service them from another health authority just over the phone?
They can definitely contact me. I've been working with a few different people from outside of Vancouver in the interior. As Sally mentioned, our family involvement policy is just for VCH. But what I've been doing is sharing that with people outside of Vancouver Coastal Health, and also referring to the Mental Health Act, right? So under Section 13, I believe it is where the freedom of information and protection of privacy. So it talks about where you can actually share information through there as well.
And one more question with regards to the police training. Is that just the city police, or is it like the RCMP, or are you familiar with, I recently had a thing with the RCMP and was in the interview room and speaking with an officer, and she said they now have to stamp MH on any files that are mental health related, and we're shooting about 90% in our town, and our police don't seem to have any training at Depot. And that's something that I would like to do as a regional educator with the BCSS, is spend a lot more time informing the RCMP. And I'm wondering if there is a training that we could maybe present to our regional depot and see if they would have a look at it and implement.
Their training, the CID training that is mandatory for us, is mandatory for all officers in BC. It's the exact same training. I know that when I was doing the crisis intervention training, it was in the very primitive stages with the RCMP, so they were sort of piggybacking on our stuff, and then it became collaborative. But all of their officers should be getting that training. I've been out of the training loop for a few years, so I don't know how they exactly go about, once members are out on the road, especially in small towns, how they actually draw them back or where they draw them back into for the training. But you could certainly speak with, go to the local detachment and ask about the CID training because they should be getting it. Yeah.
I'm not sure each of you three might answer it slightly differently, and it may be a bit of a can of worms, but how do you feel about a law court for people with mental disabilities that would allow for such things as bringing families into the care confidentiality umbrella?
I think it can't hurt. I think it would be awesome. And our court system in Vancouver is actually really good about knowing that people have a mental illness associated with the criminality. The family piece is obviously missing. And I think we're in a bit of a scramble mode with our court system in Vancouver anyways. It's behind, it's slow, it's archaic, but it would be welcome as a police officer to see that happen.
I think from the family support and involvement stance is that I would say the family support and involvement policy is something that's in place to hopefully prevent that level of needing to mandate it. So we do, when we're talking with the different professionals, we kind of talk with them about the level of involvement that they have with their loved one, and we support sharing of information pertinent to that, right? So if you're involved with the care of your loved one, whether they're living with you, you're helping them with medications, appointments, those kind of things, then we definitely encourage people to share that information. And even if that level of engagement isn't there, we still encourage people to share general information, so we're not just shutting people out, right? So it's like, well, this is what the general symptoms of a diagnosis are, these are things to watch out for, this is what the medication does, this is what to watch out for. So definitely encouraging sharing as much as possible.
Hello, I have two questions. One for Heidi and one for Sally. First of all, Heidi, it seems like you are reaching the people who are falling through the gaps of the system and getting them from 10 to 12 police contacts per year to 3. I just would like to know some of the specific things that you are doing to make this happen, like how you're accomplishing this with that population.
You know, some of our best success stories involve somebody who's, you know, really derailed, has no resources. So we instantly start to connect them with resources. And it starts with the assertive outreach team, which we're out on the road. Once they come onto our client list, we actually go out and see them every day, see them twice a day sometimes. We connect them with nearby food, shelter, an advocate, We speak with their probation officers. We get involved in every aspect of their life. And one of the biggest things that we found with the people that cross our paths is just finding them a proper home and shelter is huge. And so once that happens, then a lot of the instability stops, because now they actually have a roof over their head and dry blankets and things like that. And you know, we take them out for coffee, we take them to appointments, we take them to recovery, we make the phone call to get them in detox. So it's really intensive work. Yeah, and our turnaround is 28 days to trying to stabilize them and then get them to another type of resource.
That's just amazing. And I had a question for Sally. That hospital discharge list looks really great, but several people that I know have the experience of, because they have older adult children living with them or whatever, them being released without even letting the families know. Can you address that, please?
Yes, I've experienced that as well. We're working closely with Isabella particularly, because she's the coordinator for acute. It's going to take some time, I think, to get that ironed out, but and I think from what I heard this morning, there's going to be a more thorough intake as well, which hopefully will make a difference. But I think what we as families don't advocate for or ask for, and this is where we can really work with the Vancouver Coastal Health family team, is getting that meeting. To request a meeting with a psychiatrist before, you know, almost as soon as your loved one's in the hospital, to say, when are we going to have the family meeting? So you can find out what the plan is. And we're actually, as an organization, beginning to work with the discharge plan from jail, or, you know, forensics, because you think hospital's bad, forensics is even worse. So it will be a process, but to have the checklist at least, and to take it with you, you can print it off our website, or, you know, ask me to send it to you. It's a really great reminder to go through these steps of what's going to happen step by step.
Just a note on that, when in the clients on the ACT teams, each ACT team has about 80 clients. And the assertive outreach team carries about 40. We actually meet with the doctors on discharge and drive most of these guys to where they need to get to, or gals. So, you know, that's closing another loop. We're contacting the families and letting families know at the outset what's happening with their people.
Thank you to Justun and Heidi, and thank you all for your great questions.